I found a lump while checking the mailbox. No, that's not right. Let me start where the story actually starts. I was standing in a parking garage in Denver when a notary I had never met called to confirm my signature on a power of attorney I had never signed. I asked her to repeat herself. She read the date back to me, a Tuesday I remembered clearly, because I had spent that entire day 3,000 miles away, inspecting a bridge deck in Seattle with 4 other engineers who could vouch for every hour of it. I thanked her calmly, hung up, and sat in my car for a long time without turning the key. I didn't call my stepbrother. I didn't call my mother. I opened a blank note on my phone and typed the date, the notary's name, and the words, "Find out who." My name is Renata Cole. I'm 34, a structural engineer, and until that phone call I believed my father's estate was a simple, sad, ordinary thing. A house, some savings, a will splitting everything evenly between me and my stepbrother Colton. I was wrong about how simple it was. I just didn't know yet how wrong. My father, Walter Cole, died 8 months earlier of a heart attack, quick and without warning, the kind of death that leaves no time to say the things you meant to say. I flew home for the funeral, sat through it dry-eyed because someone had to keep it together, and flew back to work 3 days later because grief doesn't pay a mortgage. Colton stayed behind. He always stayed behind. He'd moved into Dad's house 2 years earlier, after his second divorce, and never quite moved out. Dad let him stay because that's who Dad was, generous to a fault, especially with the son who needed generosity the most. I should explain something about Colton, because it matters. He wasn't cruel. He was worse than cruel. He was likable, charming at dinners, quick with a joke, the kind of person a room warms to without asking why. He'd borrowed money from Dad for years, a truck, a business that failed again, and every time, Dad wrote it off as a loan he'd forgive eventually. I used to tell Dad he was letting Colton coast. Dad would just say, "He's finding his way," and change the subject. I stopped arguing about it a long time ago. Arguing about Colton never changed anything, so I learned to stay quiet and let it go. That habit of staying quiet would matter more than I knew. 3 weeks after the notary's call, I drove to the house to pick up a box of Dad's old drafting tools I'd asked Colton to set aside. While I waited in the kitchen, I noticed a manila folder on the counter, half tucked under a stack of mail, with the county recorder's seal peeking out from the corner. I didn't touch it. I photographed it with my phone from across the room, the way you'd photograph evidence you're not sure yet is evidence, and left with my box like nothing had happened. That night, I zoomed in on the photo. It was a deed transfer, dated the same Tuesday the notary had called about, transferring my father's house, fully, solely, into Colton's name, filed 9 days after Dad's funeral. I didn't confront him. I want to be honest about why, not because I'm patient by nature, but because I've learned that anger tips your hand before you have anything to hold. So I did the quiet thing instead. I requested the recorded deed from the county clerk's office myself, in person, under my own name, and got a certified copy. I compared the notary's stamp against 3 other documents from that same notary's public filings, and found her signature style didn't match. The loops were wrong, rushed, nothing like her usual hand. I called her office again, this time recording the call with her knowledge, and asked her directly whether she remembered notarizing a Renata Cole. She paused for a long moment and said she had no memory of ever meeting me. That was the first thread. The second came from my father's bank. I requested his final statements as co-executor, a right I still technically held since the will, the real one, filed with his attorney years earlier, had never been revoked. Buried in the statements was a $40,000 transfer out of Dad's account, made 6 weeks before he died, to an account under Colton's name, labeled simply loan repayment. Dad had never mentioned a loan being repaid. He'd mentioned, more than once, that Colton still owed him closer to $60,000. I let Colton keep talking during our next call. He mentioned, almost offhand, that he'd been helping settle some of Dad's affairs and that I didn't need to worry about the house stuff, it was handled. I said that sounded fine. I asked easy questions. I let him relax into the story he was telling himself. People who believe they've already won tend to say more than they should, and Colton said plenty, including, near the end of the call, a comment about how the notary was an old friend from the bar he tended before, which was a detail he didn't need to give me and one I wrote down the second we hung up. I brought everything to my father's estate attorney, a woman named Priscilla Ahn who had drafted his real will and had no patience for what she was looking at. She confirmed the deed I'd photographed had never crossed her desk, confirmed the will on file at her office still named me co-inheritor exactly as my father intended, and told me flatly that what I was describing, a forged notarization used to transfer real property after a death, combined with a falsified loan repayment designed to explain away a missing $40,000, was not a family dispute. It was fraud, filed with the county, and it was a matter for the probate court and, likely, the district attorney's fraud unit. I still didn't confront Colton. I let the reading of the will proceed as scheduled, at Priscilla's office, with Colton walking in already certain the house was his, and already planning, he later admitted, to sell it within the month. Priscilla opened the meeting the way she opens every meeting, calmly, procedurally, and then set two documents on the table: the certified deed transfer, and beside it, the notary's sworn statement, taken the week before, confirming she had never notarized any document for Renata or Walter Cole on that date, and that her notary stamp appeared to have been used without her knowledge. Colton's face did the thing I'd been waiting 8 months to see. Not shock, recognition. The recognition of someone watching a story he'd told himself so many times start to come apart in someone else's hands. "This is insane," he said. "I was helping Dad. I've always helped Dad. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You helped yourself to a signature you don't have and $40,000 for a debt you never repaid," I said. "I'm not angry that you needed money, Colton. I'm done pretending I didn't see what you did to get it." He didn't have an answer because there wasn't one that survived a certified deed and a notary's sworn statement. The probate court voided the deed transfer within 6 weeks, restoring the house to the estate to be divided as my father had actually intended. The district attorney's fraud unit opened a formal investigation into the forged notarization. Colton eventually took a plea agreement requiring restitution of the misappropriated funds and 2 years of probation. The notary, cleared of wrongdoing once her stamp was confirmed stolen from an old client file, filed her own complaint against him separately. I sold my half of the house. I didn't need the money as badly as I needed to stop owning any part of a place that had become evidence. Colton and I haven't spoken since the sentencing hearing, and for a long time I wondered if that silence would feel like loss. It doesn't, mostly. It feels like the first honest thing between us in years. What I keep coming back to isn't the courtroom, or the deed, or even the $40,000. It's that I spent 30 years quietly deciding Colton's charm was worth more than my own certainty, and one Tuesday phone call finally taught me it wasn't. I didn't destroy my brother. I just stopped covering for the version of him that only ever existed because I kept staying quiet. So I'll ask you what I still ask myself some nights. If you found out someone you loved had forged your name to take what wasn't theirs, would you have shown up at that reading and said nothing until the paper was already on the table? Or would you have needed to hear them lie to your face first?